Hey, what's going on, guys? This Saturday is UFC Vegas 85, Roman Dolidze versus Nassourdine Imavov, and this is going to be my full card predictions. I'm going to go through every single fight on the card and give you a quick breakdown and prediction. Starting off with the first fight of the night, we have Thomas Petersen versus Jamal Pogues. Thomas Petersen's coming off of Dana White's Contender Series. He got a win over Chandler Cole, who literally has the worst physique I've ever seen in MMA. And it was a mildly competitive fight, but then Petersen was able to get the takedown and get a submission, get a key lock submission. This is just a super low-level heavyweight fight. That's why it's the first fight on the card. Jamal Pogues, a couple fights ago, came off of Dana White's Contender Series, has a loss against Mick Parkin in his last fight, only win in the UFC's against Josh Parisian in his butt crack. This is just two guys who don't have the best striking, who primarily like to kind of default to clinch and ground game. But I think Thomas Petersen has better grappling. And I think that's what will win him this fight. Thomas Petersen, 8 wins, all 8 via finish. So he has finishing potential, whether it be via submission or TKO. And I think he has decent enough striking. He might even have the edge in striking against Jamal Pogues, even though both of them are super low level. So for this matchup, I'm going to go Thomas Petersen, second round TKO. Jamal Pogues doesn't have great cardio. Thomas Petersen, we don't really know how good his cardio is. But I think Petersen can hang with him on the feet, maybe even win a couple exchanges on the feet. Then I think he'll look for takedowns. I think he will be able to get Jamal Pogues down. And I think he'll be able to control him on the ground. I think in the second round, Jamal Pogues will start to be exhausted. And I see Thomas Petersen either finding a submission in the second round or finding a TKO in the second round. But I'm going to go Thomas Petersen, second round TKO, ground and pound. After he takes him down, Pogues is exhausted. It's late second round. And Thomas Petersen pounds him out and then maybe finds a submission. But I think he's going to pound him out with ground and pound. Moving up on the card, we have Marquel Mederos versus Landon Quiñones. This is actually a good fight. This is actually a really solid matchup. I'm looking forward to it. Both are pretty good strikers. Quiñones came in on short notice in his last fight and lost to Nasrat Haqparast, but had a decent showing, was chopping the legs of Nasrat Haqparast. This is one of those fights where it honestly could go either way. You have Mederos coming off of Dana White's Contender Series, got a KO with a knee there. Before that, another KO as well in Fury FC. And then he's just coming from another organization. Kind of inexperienced, 8-1 overall. But I think what this matchup really comes down to is neither guy is particularly a great grappler. I think Quiñones has a little bit better grappling. But I think Mederos is the better striker. He's kind of got a little bit of a funky style. He's got very fast hands. He's constantly switching stances. And I think he'll kind of be able to box Quiñones up similar to Nasrat Haqparast, and I don't think Quiñones is going to be able to shoot takedowns and get Mederos down and hold him down. So I think Mederos is going to go out there and pretty much outstrike him. I think it's going to be a close competitive fight, but I think Mederos is clearly going to win. I see him winning like a 29-28 decision. But Mederos, when I went back and watched some of his fights, he is able to be taken down. So maybe Quiñones wins this with his grappling, but I just think Mederos has the striking ability, kind of has a funky style with his footwork, constantly switching stances. I think he'll be able to avoid the takedowns. I think he'll land the better shots on the feet. I think Quiñones maybe sneaks out around somewhere along the fight, but I think Marquel Mederos gets it done via 29-28 decision. Moving up on the card, we have Julia Stoliarenko versus Luana Carolina. Talk about a barn burner. Both of them have horrible striking. Julia Stoliarenko has very good BJJ and submission ability. She's coming off that submission win against Molly McCann, where she was kind of getting tagged on the feet and then got a takedown and, just ran through Molly McCann and then found an armbar. Before that, she lost to Chelsea Chandler by TKO, which is an absolute embarrassment. You have Luana Carolina coming off a win over Ivana Petrovic. Before that, lost to Joanne Wood. Before that, lost to Molly McCann, got KO'd by Molly McCann. This is a matchup, it's kind of striker versus grappler because I think Carolina has the better striking and Stoliarenko obviously clearly has the better grappling. She has 10 out of 11 wins via submissions. And also Carolina's pretty good in the clinch. But I think ultimately, I think Stoliarenko will be able to find a takedown in this fight, whether it's some weird, shot that lands and Carolina's throwing a weird kick and gets knocked off balance and slips and ends up on her back. I think Stoliarenko will end up on top of her. On the ground, and I think Stoliarenko's BJJ is leaps and bounds better. I think once she gets it there, she'll be able to find a submission. So I'm going to go Julia Stoliarenko's second round armbar. I don't trust Luana Carolina to get this done at all. She's literally, they're both bottom of the barrel, but, she's losing to Joanne Wood. I know people hyped her up, isn't good at all. It's a split decision. She got out grappled, taken down a couple times in that fight. losing to Molly McCann, getting brutally KO'd by Molly McCann. I know MMA math doesn't always work, but Julia Stoliarenko coming off a win against Molly McCann. So I don't see Karolina stopping Stoliarenko. If Karolina wins, it'll be via decision. But I think Julia Stoliarenko will be able to find a path to the ground, and I think she'll be able to find a submission. So I'm going to go Julia Stoliarenko second round submission. I'm going to say Stoliarenko pulls off another armbar. So I'm going Stoliarenko second round armbar. Moving up on the card, we have Blake Bilder versus Jeong Lee. This is an interesting matchup. Blake Bilder's coming off that loss against Kyle Nelson, where a lot of people, I feel like, were picking Blake Bilder in that fight. Blake Bilder is a guy that's kind of looked decent, but really in his last fight kind of got exposed as not that great. I believe he came off of Dana White's Contender Series, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he did. He got a win over Yeong, which it was kind of competitive, so that hasn't aged quite well at all. He's 33 years old. He's decently well-rounded, but he kind of wants to grapple. I do think he is the bigger fighter in this matchup, so that could be beneficial. But then you have Jeong Lee, who is like this explosive striker who's very fast, has KO power. Coming off a split decision win, but it was a very fun fight. He came off road to the UFC, and he's 28 years old. He has a 2-inch height advantage, and he has a massive reach advantage. He has a 4.5-inch reach advantage over Blake Bilder, and he's the much better striker. But he hasn't fought the best level of opposition. I mean, you look at his last few opponents, outside of his last fight before that, 8-3, 8-3, 7-0, 8-4. So not the worst level of opposition. I mean, Blake Bilder barely a little bit step above that, to be quite honest. But I think Jeong Lee is the way better striker. I think he's way faster, way more explosive. And I think Blake Bilder's just going to be shooting on takedowns the majority of this fight, trying to grapple, and his grappling isn't that good. I mean, Kyle Nelson was piecing him up and stuffing takedowns. So I'm going to go Jeong Lee. I'm going to say he wins via decision. But, I don't know how dominant. I'm going to say 30-27 decision win for Jeong Lee. I think he gets it done. I could even see him KOing Blake Bilder on the feet. So I'm going to go Jeong Lee. I'm going to say decision. I'm going to say he gets it done 30-27. Just outstrikes him, stuffs the takedown. I think Blake Bilder maybe sneaks out around in the clinch, but I think Jeong Lee gets it done on the feet, just boxes up Blake Bilder, kickboxes, lands some good kicks to the body, kicks to the legs, and just kind of picks him apart from range, uses his footwork, and wins the decision. Moving up on the card, we got Themba Gorimbo versus Pete Rodriguez. Gorimbo coming off that win over Takashi Sato. Before that loss to AJ Fletcher, was having some success in that fight and then ended up getting submitted, was using his grappling. Then you have Pete Rodriguez coming off a win over Mike Jackson, quite possibly the worst fighter in the UFC ever. And then before that got brutalized by Jack Della Maddalena. Pete Rodriguez is significantly younger, 6 years younger, 33 years old for Gorimbo, 27 for Pete Rodriguez. And honestly, this is striker versus grappler too. Even though Gorimbo has some decent striking, he wants to take you down, he wants to get your back. He has decent power again. He has decent striking. Pete Rodriguez, though, just wants to throw massive shots, look for KOs. He's 5-1, relatively inexperienced. I mean, Gorimbo's not that much more experienced, 11-4 overall. Lost to AJ Fletcher, has another loss against a guy who's 16-3 back in UAE Warriors. I feel like I think the UFC wants to build Gorimbo just because of that whole backstory, the post-fight press conference, the connection to The Rock. And I think they gave him this matchup as kind of an easily winnable matchup because I think Gorimbo has a massive advantage on the ground. So I'm going to go Themba Gorimbo via, I'm going to say second round rear naked choke. He likes to get you down, get your back. He was out grappling AJ Fletcher at points in that fight before he ends up getting guillotine, jumps into a guillotine on a takedown. Was dominating Takashi Sato with the grappling. He gets you down, he gets your back, he beats you up. And I think he'll be able to do that against Pete Rodriguez. And I don't think Pete Rodriguez has the grappling to fend off Gorimbo's rear naked choke attack. So I think Gorimbo gets it done with his grappling. I think he's going to be shooting early and often. I think the first round will probably control him, maybe even get a submission there, maybe even beat him up on the ground and finish him like that. But I think eventually he will find a rear naked choke from the back position. And I think the first round, he could be a little bit nervous to shoot. Pete Rodriguez, very explosive in the first round. Maybe halfway through the first round, gets a takedown, a little bit of control time, but not enough time to find a submission. Then I think in the second round, he's more comfortable with the timing, shoots an early takedown, gets a takedown, gets the back, and gets the rear naked choke in the second round. So I'm going Themba Gorimbo, second round, the rear naked choke. Moving up on the card, we have Charles Johnson versus Azat Maksum. I mean, is this really that difficult of a fight to pick? Charles Johnson, I feel like his takedown defense, even though it's kind of horrible, I feel like it's borderline underrated because look at who he's fighting. Rafael Estevam, Cody Durden, and Ode Osborne. Okay, Ode Osborne, not really. But also, back, not that long ago, wasn't he fighting Muhammad Makhachev at one point? I thought. Maybe not. Maybe I'm mistaken. Yeah, he's been active, so it probably was. I think he did fight Muhammad Makhachev at one point in time. So he's fighting all these really good grapplers, and Azat's not like this super elite level grappler, but he has some decent grappling. He's coming off a win over Tyson Nam, which was very, very close. Azat I feel like he more relies on his striking than anything, but I think he showed decent grappling in the Pham fight, and I think that's the story of Charles Johnson's career, basically, getting out grappled. And I think in this fight, he's going to get outstruck. I think he's going to get out grappled. He does kind of have a funky style, so he might have a little bit of success on the feet, but he's 33 years old. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. He's fighting an undefeated 17-0 guy in Azat. And, one thing about this, though, is Johnson's never been finished. I couldn't believe that. He's never been finished his entire career. Maksum has some decent wrestling, has a decent jab, doesn't have the best gas tank, didn't look that great against Pham. But I think Maksum gets it done with his grappling, and I just think he's well-rounded, and I think he's going to come back a little bit more improved since his last fight. So I'm going to go Azat Maksum. I'm going to say 29-28 decision. Maybe he drops the third round to Charles Johnson, because Charles Johnson has decent cardio. He's very gritty, and I feel like his takedown defense is a little bit underrated because he does get taken down a lot and controlled a lot, but he does fend off. Like, there's a lot of guys chaining takedowns together. So I'm going to go Azat Maksum 29-28 decision. Moving up on the card, the last prelim, we have Molly McCann versus Diana Belbiţă 2. I'm glad I looked at the resume because I forgot they fought back in, I believe it was 2019. Yeah, they fought back in 2019. Molly McCann won via decision. And I feel like a lot of people are going to pick Molly McCann in this matchup because of that, the fact that they fought back in 2019 and Molly McCann beat her. But Diana Belbiţă, 6 years younger. So when they fought back in 2019, that's 5 years ago, she was only 22 years old, where Molly McCann was 28 years old. So much more experienced. Molly McCann just wants to march forward, throw big power shots, look for KOs. Diana Belbiţă, I feel like even though she's low level, I feel like every time she comes out more improved. She has a decent jab. She tucks her chin well. Her grappling has improved rapidly. She lost her last fight against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, but she had some decent scrambles, some decent throws and trips in that fight. Against Maria Oliveira, had a couple takedowns in that fight as well. She got taken down as well, I believe, in that fight. I know she's lost to some bad fighters. I mean, Gloria De Paula and Karolina Kowalkiewicz kind of having a career resurgence, so not the worst loss. And then she's beaten Maria Oliveira, who's not the greatest. But Molly McCann's been in the UFC for a while. She's literally a bum. I mean, look who she's beaten. Hannah Goldie, Luana Carolina, Jeong Kim. Not the greatest competition for Molly McCann either. So I know Molly McCann has a win over Diana Belbiţă, but the way I look at it, I went back and rewatched that fight. Even though Molly McCann, I think she won 30-26, there was a point deduction for a fence grab by Belbiţă. Molly McCann was actually forced to grapple in that fight against Belbiţă to win the fight, use her strength and power. And also, that was up a weight class at flyweight. So you have Molly McCann losing her last two, got submitted by Julia Stoliarenko, got submitted by Erin Blanchfield, up a weight class. Now she's coming back down. She's going to be draining herself. It's also down a weight class from where they previously fought. And I think Belbiţă over the last 5 years has improved massively, where Molly McCann's literally exactly the same. So I'm going to go Diana Belbiţă via decision. I think she gets it done. I'm actually going to go, I'm going to say 29-28 decision. I was going to say 30-27 decision. I think one round will be pretty close, and, maybe the judges give it to Molly McCann. But I think Belbiţă has this. I'm confident in Belbiţă. Again, it was 5 years ago they fought. Belbiţă has gotten a lot better, where Molly McCann has been stagnant, and Belbiţă was making Molly McCann shoot 5 years ago. So I think Belbiţă is going to be able to outstrike her as long as she doesn't get clipped with a big shot, which she does take some shots, but she was able to take Molly McCann's power back then. Also, you have to take into account Molly McCann, her last two fights, up a weight class. Now, kind of going back down to strawweight where she said she was too small. So I see Diana Belbiţă outstriking her. I could see Diana Belbiţă in the clinch, hip tossing her to the ground, tripping Molly McCann down, controlling her a bit on the ground as well. Her grappling has improved. And I think Diana Belbiţă gets it done via 29-28 decision in the rematch against Molly McCann, who's basically a bum. And I think Diana Belbiţă is a little bit above bottom of the barrel. Moving up on the card with the first fight on the main card, we have Gilbert Urbina versus Charles Radtke. Gilbert Urbina kind of trading wins and losses in his last few fights. His last fight was a win against Orion Kosei, body kick TKO. Before that, lost to Brian Battle via rear naked choke. He was on The Ultimate Fighter. I believe he got flatlined by Tresean Gore on The Ultimate Fighter, or finished by Tresean Gore on The Ultimate Fighter. The Bryan Battle fight, he took on a couple days' notice. He was winning early, then started to tire, and then that's when he ended up losing to Bryan Battle. And that was up a weight class at welterweight. Meanwhile, you have Charles Radtke coming off a win over Mike Mathetha, formerly known as Blood Diamond, but based off his performances, he's lost that nickname. And honestly, Charles Radtke, while he won that fight, he looked horrible in it. I mean, Mike Mathetha was landing on him, busted him up, had his eye all busted up. And Mike Mathetha literally is one of the worst fighters in the UFC. I think Gilbert Urbina easily gets this win. I think he can out-grapple Charles Radtke. Charles Radtke, kind of like a gritty, likes in-close boxing, kind of striking, dirty boxing type of guy who likes to mix in the grappling. But I think he doesn't have the best cardio. I mean, it was clinch fest against Mike Mathetha in the third round because he was so exhausted. I think it was Herb Dean that was breaking him 24-7 in the third round. Gilbert Urbina has excellent grappling, was out-grappling Bryan Battle up a weight class. Urbina looked excellent in his last fight against Orion Kosei, and I think Urbina's better everywhere. I think he outstrikes him. I think he outgrapples him. You look at their, height and reach. I mean, you literally have a 6-inch height advantage for Urbina and a 3-inch reach advantage for Urbina, and he's also 6 years younger. So I don't even think this is that close. I'm going to go Gilbert Urbina second round TKO. I just think he's way better than Charles Radtke. I think Radtke is gritty enough where he'll survive the first round. Urbina won't be super aggressive early. But I think at welterweight, where Urbina's coming down, had a competitive match against Bryan Battle on short notice, but he kind of got exhausted and ended up getting out-grappled. But he was out-grappling Bryan Battle early in that fight and out-striking Bryan Battle. I think he even rocked Bryan Battle. I think he's way better than Charles Radtke, especially down a weight class. It's not like Charles Radtke's going to have some type of strength advantage. So I'm going to go Gilbert Urbina, second round TKO, catches him on the feet, follows him to the ground, and finishes him off with some ground and pound in the second round. Moving up on the card, we have Aliaskhab Khizriev versus Makhmud Muradov. This is an interesting matchup. Khizriev is 14-0, undefeated. Muradov's coming off that win over Bryan Barberena, where even though he won, I just didn't think he looked particularly great, especially considering Bryan Barberena didn't belong at the weight class. Khizriev has kind of been inactive. He only, he came off Dana White's Contender Series. That was 3.5 years ago. He only had one fight, and that was against Dennis Tulululin 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. They're both 33 years old. I would classify them both kind of as grapplers, but Khizriev, I wouldn't say he's as reliant on honestly, they're both very similar. Like, they both have striking ability. Muradov was lighting up Bryan Barberena's last two fights before that, Caio Borralho, Gerald Meerschaert. But in those fights, he had some moments. I mean, he was even on top of Caio Borralho, reversing him, ending up on top of him a couple times. So both of them have very good grappling, and I think, honestly, what this fight comes down to is who's going to have the edge, because they're both decent strikers, they're both decent grapplers, but who's going to be better? And I think Khizriev just has a very slight edge in both facets. I think Khizriev's a better grappler, and I also think he's a better striker. And you're looking at Muradov's last few fights. I mean, he's struggling. He's going life and death with Bryan Barberena. He's losing to Caio Borralho, getting out grappled in that, even though he had some moments himself. He's ended up full mounted multiple times. And Khizriev, I just think, even though he's been inactive from the recent fights that we've seen, he's looked pretty good. He looked good against Dennis Tululin. He got clipped up a little bit on the feet, but not really much. And then I think he knocked him down and then immediately got a rear naked choke against Tululin. But I think Khizriev is just a little bit better. I see him being able to out-grapple Muradov. I think Muradov relies on the striking a little bit more than the grappling, and I think Khizriev will be able to strike with him, and I think he will be able to find a takedown. I think he will be able to potentially control him, maybe even get in full mount like Caio Borralho was able to. And I'm going to go with Khizriev. I think he's going to get it done the same way he got it done against Tululin. I think he's going to get it done rear naked choke. So I'm going to go Aliaskhab Khizriev via second round rear naked choke against Makhmud Muradov. I just don't trust Makhmud Muradov. Don't trust his cardio. And also, one thing I'm looking out for is weird things are happening in every Muradov fight. I think there was 2 headbutts in the Bryan Barberena fight. In the Caio Borralho fight, I think there was like eye pokes. I mean, I was watching his fights, and it's literally like every fight there's something weird happening in. So I'll keep an eye out for that. But I'm going Khizriev's second round rear naked choke. Moving up on the card, we have Viviane Araujo versus Natália Silva. This is a very easy fight to pick. I'm going Natália Silva. I'm going to pick Natália Silva via decision, 30-27 decision. Viviane Araujo, 37 years old. She's coming off a win over Jennifer Maia where she out-grappled her. Lost before that against Amanda Ribas where she got out-grappled herself. Lost before that against Alexa Grasso where she got out-boxed. Natália Silva, very light on her feet. Very good footwork. Very good side-to-side movement. A little bit of a disappointing performance against Andrea Lee where I felt like she could be more aggressive, but she wasn't. But I just don't think Araujo is going to be able to take her down and control her. You know, Natália Silva is very athletic and has very good footwork. She's going to be hard to track down. And then it's not even close on the feet. Natália Silva, dynamic with her kicks, has finishing ability. And I just think, you know, you look at this matchup, 37-year-old Araujo, who wants to just shoot on takedowns, has okay striking, but primarily wants to use her BJJ. I just think you look at Natália Silva, 12 wins out of 16 via finish, and excellent movement, excellent side-to-side movement. I don't think Araujo is going to be able to get a takedown. Natália Silva has shown good takedown defense, even though Andrea Lee really wasn't shooting on takedowns. So I'm going to go Natália Silva via decision just because Araujo is very durable. And also Natália Silva was kind of, you know, underwhelming. There was no sense of urgency in her last fight, so I'm not going to pick her via finish. But it wouldn't shock me if Natália Silva KOs her. That's how good she is on the feet. Excellent kicks. Even had that one spinning back kick, I believe it was. Or it was a head kick 2 fights ago, I believe, where she got a finish. But Natália Silva, significantly better, significantly younger. And, you know, I mean, 10 years younger for Natália Silva. I think she gets it done on the feet. But I'm going to go Natália Silva, outstriking her to a 30-27 decision. Moving up on the card, we have Randy Brown versus Muslim Salihoff. This is a fight that I already broke down at UFC 296. Randy Brown pulled out. I believe he was sick. This is a fight, honestly, it's not that hard to pick because you have Salihoff, who's 39 years old. Does he have decent striking? Yes. Does he have decent grappling? Yes. But you look at his last few fights, lost to Nicholas Dalby, hasn't aged that badly, honestly. Beat Andre Fialho. Andre Fialho is a dead body at this point, not even went to UFC before. And then before that got KO'd by Li Jingliang. So Muslim Salihoff, I just think in this fight, he's just at a massive disadvantage. He has an 8-inch reach disadvantage. He has a 4-inch height disadvantage. He has a massive youth advantage. 33 years old for Randy Brown, almost 40 years old for Muslim Salihoff. Muslim Salihoff also doesn't have the greatest gas tank. He likes to throw like spinning techniques, spinning kicks, has some okay grappling, but I just think Randy Brown, rangy striker, decent, you know, reach. I mean, a huge reach advantage, which is crazy. And he can eat some kicks. You know, he was eating some kicks from Jack Della Maddalena. He got finished by Jack Della Maddalena, but that's aged quite well. So I'm going Randy Brown in this fight. I could see him getting a late round finish, but I'm going to go Randy Brown via decision. I'm going to say 29-28 decision. I think Muslim Salihoff probably wins the first round. He's more explosive, but as the fight goes on, he just fades, and I just don't see him being able to go out there and beat up Randy Brown from range because Muslim Salihoff wants to strike, but he has an 8-inch reach disadvantage, a 4-inch height disadvantage. I just don't see how he goes out there and beats Randy Brown outside of a finish. Randy Brown has been finished 4 times. But I think Randy Brown, rangy, well-rounded, not really a huge weakness anywhere, and Muslim Salihoff likes to strike. So he's going to strike with Randy Brown. Randy Brown's going to be pumping the jab, picking him apart from range, and I see Randy Brown winning this fight 29-28 decision. Moving up on the card, we have Renato Moicano versus Drew Dober, the co-main event. Renato Moicano, been out for a little bit, been out for over a year. Had a fight booked, but it ended up getting canceled against Arman Tsarukyan, and that's probably the best for Renato Moicano. Before that, got absolutely wrecked by Rafael Dos Anjos, got out-grappled. They made it 5 rounds for no reason. Before that, a win over Alexander Hernandez via submission, Jai Herbert submission. And, you know, he's only losing to really good guys, Rafael Dos Anjos and Rafael Fiziev in his last 5 fights. You have Drew Dober coming off of that win over Ricky Glenn, which is absolutely meaningless. Basically, you have Drew Dober, who likes to pressure and throw big power shots and look for a KO. And then you have Renato Moicano, whose striking has been improving. Plus, he has excellent grappling in BJJ. And honestly, I think Moicano's striking has improved so much, he can outstrike Drew Dober. I really do. And he's got a 2-inch reach advantage. He's got a 3-inch height advantage. And I think Renato Moicano has really good straight punches where Drew Dober's throwing looping shots. So that reach advantage, even though it's only 2 inches, it's going to be much more pronounced because you have Drew Dober kind of throwing wild winging hooks. And unless he clips Renato Moicano, I don't see him finishing him. So, I mean, you look back at Drew Dober's last few fights, the Ricky Glenn fight, okay, he wins that. The Matt Frevola fight got KO'd by Matt Frevola. Fight before that against Bobby Green, he was losing and got a KO, was getting clipped up on the feet, but then just found pressure and got a KO. I do think the smaller cage benefits him, but I just think Renato Moicano can out-grapple him, can outstrike him, And I think Renato Moicano will rely on the grappling in this fight. He's not going to want to worry about Drew Dober's power on the feet. I think he's going to use straight punches when he is striking. I think he's going to mix in the takedowns. I think he will be able to get Drew Dober down. We have seen Drew Dober taken down and controlled before. And Moicano has 10 out of 17 wins via submission. So unless Drew Dober just really presses forward and lands a big power shot, I see Renato Moicano landing on the feet. We've seen him against Brad Riddell. Hurt Brad Riddell on the feet with straight punches, follows him to the ground, gets a rear naked choke. And I think we're going to see something similar in this fight as well. I see Drew Dober walking on to like a big straight left or straight right, or a jab that just catches him as he's coming in and rocks him and hurts him and kind of wobbles him. And then Renato Moicano is immediately going to grapple and look for the submission. So I'm going to go Renato Moicano via second round rear naked choke. I just think his grappling is far superior to Drew Dober. And if it ends up on the ground, Renato Moicano will find a finish. So I'm going to pick him via second round rear naked choke. Unless Drew Dober, in kind of the craziness where he's kind of marching forward and throwing wild winging hooks, lands a big shot and KOs Moicano, which I don't think is very likely. I just think Moicano will beat Drew Dober, and I think he will not hang on the feet for too long. He's going to know he has a massive advantage in the grappling. He's going to exploit that advantage. So I'm going Renato Moicano, second round rear naked choke. Moving up on the card to the main event, we have Roman Dolidze versus Nassourdine Imavov, two top-ranked middleweights. I believe right now you have Roman Dolidze, who's number 8, Nassourdine Imavov, who's number 11 in the UFC official rankings. You have Roman Dolidze coming off that loss against Marvin Vettori, but he very well could have won that fight. It was a close fight. It was kind of an ugly fight. Both guys' gas tanks didn't look particularly good. And then you have Nassourdine Imavov coming off the no decision against Chris Curtis, and then before that, a unanimous decision loss against Sean Strickland, which honestly hasn't aged that badly because Sean Strickland obviously went on to become champion against Israel Adesanya, and Imavov was having success early in that fight, and he was making Sean Strickland clinch him. So it was really the clinch and the grappling of Strickland that kind of beat Imavov, but also the cardio, obviously. And Roman Dolidze, he's a massive middleweight. I mean, he is humongous. He's strong. He has good grappling. And I think this is kind of a striker versus grappler matchup in a way, but Dolidze really doesn't like to use his grappling. Unless he's taken down and shot on, he doesn't like to use his BJJ. He just kind of marches forward and throws big shots. And in this fight against Nassourdine Imavov, I think the smaller cage definitely benefits Roman Dolidze. I mean, if Roman Dolidze wins this fight, he has to win it with his grappling because Nassourdine Imavov, his striking has improved over the last couple years. He looks very slick on the feet. I mean, he was landing good shots on Sean Strickland. I know he lost. I don't want to elevate a fighter too much off of a loss, but he was landing good shots on Sean Strickland, who's very hard to hit. Roman Dolidze leaves his chin out there to be had when he's throwing these wild looping shots. And I know he has big power, but I just think Nassourdine Imavov's just crisper on the feet. And I think Dolidze is going to have to grapple. I think he has to grapple. I think he has to try to control Imavov in the clinch, look for a takedown, and control him there. And I think Dolidze would have a jiu-jitsu advantage as well. Sean Strickland was able to take Imavov down. I'm sure Dolidze probably could take Imavov down. And Dolidze, I mean, looks incredible in the grappling exchange. Look what he did to Jack Hermanson. Put him in the calf slicer and just brutalized him. And had excellent scrambles throughout that fight. Excellent sweeps throughout that fight. Has amazing BJJ. So Dolidze is going to have to grapple in this fight if he wants to win. Because I just don't see those wild winging power shots catching Nassourdine Imavov and putting him down. So I think Nassourdine Imavov in this fight has to avoid the clinching, has to avoid the takedowns, has to use his footwork, but he has excellent footwork. But I do worry about his cardio, but Dolidze doesn't have the cardio to push the pace. He was getting very tired in the third round against Marvin Vettori. So we've seen Nassourdine go 5 rounds. Cardio didn't look that great, but I think it would have looked better than Dolidze if he went 5 rounds. So I'm going to go Nassourdine Imavov via decision. I think he's going to avoid the grappling. I think he's going to be able to land the better shots on the feet. I think he's faster on the feet. I think he has more technical hands. And I think Dolidze is just a guy who just marches forward with power and then doesn't use his grappling enough. I think Dolidze should come out in this fight and it should be a heavy grappling game plan. And maybe he does it. Maybe he surprises me. Because I think he could out-grapple Nassourdine Imavov. I think it's going to be tough. I think he's going to have to fight for it. But we've seen excellent scrambles from Dolidze, excellent sweeps from Dolidze. But he just doesn't use his grappling enough. And also, he hasn't fought the best competition either. I mean, Marvin Vettori's the best fighter he fought. He lost that fight. It wasn't that great. It could have been a win for Dolidze, but it wasn't. Beat Jack Hermanson, lost the first round. And then Jack Hermanson just makes a mistake in the second round, gets out-grappled, and ends up in that calf slicer. Then the fight before that, KO win over Phil Hawes. I mean, that hasn't aged well. KO win over Kyle Dawkins. That hasn't aged well. So Dolidze hasn't even beat you know, there's not really a staple win for Dolidze, where Imavov, I understand you could say the same for him, but you know, he looked excellent against Chris Curtis in his last fight before the accidental head clash that cut open Chris Curtis. Fight against Sean Strickland looked decent. Even in the clinch was lighting up Sean Strickland with exit elbows. So I see Imavov doing okay in the clinch against Dolidze. He has excellent footwork, excellent lateral movement. I see him avoiding the takedowns of Dolidze, and I see him just boxing him up on the feet. I could see Imavov getting like a third or fourth round finish in this fight, but I think both guys don't have excellent gas tanks, so I see Imavov kind of starting off slow because he wants to conserve his energy, and I see Dolidze kind of just swinging those big power punches looking for a finish that he's not going to find. So I'm going to go Nassourdine Imavov via decision, just outstriking him. Maybe Dolidze gets around. So I'm going to say maybe a 49-46 decision for Nassourdine Imavov, but I just think he's more technical in the feet. I do think it's a disservice for Imavov to accept this fight at the Apex because the smaller cage is going to be beneficial for Roman Dolidze. And I see Roman Dolidze, after he realizes he's not going to win on the feet and he's not going to find that big KO shot, I see him looking to grapple a little bit later, but it's going to be too little too late. He's already going to be tired. He's already going to be slower. His entries already aren't that good. And I just see Imavov just kind of picking him apart at range, landing those sneaky left hands where he just comes around the guard like he was landing on Sean Strickland. In the clinch, when Dolidze does find a clinch, I see Imavov fighting out of the clinch, landing an elbow on the break. And I just think Imavov is going to be able to outstrike him primarily the majority of this fight and winning a 49-46 decision. Maybe one round Dolidze is close and then gets a takedown and then controls him for like 30 seconds and maybe ekes out that round. But I think Nassourdine Imavov clearly wins this fight and jumps up in the UFC middleweight rankings. So I'm going Nassourdine Imavov via decision. Let me know what you guys think of my predictions down in the comments. Who are you picking in the main event, Dolidze or Imavov? Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.